Housing starts and construction expenses are often leading economic indicators, but how about now in our post-COVID world? And as more people want to work at home, what's going to happen to office construction? We're on location with Matt Grosshandler, who's co-founder and VP of Operations of Bald Hill Builders, and welcome to the Language of Business.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Matt, what are you seeing right now in terms of general construction work?
So just coming out of a pretty tough economy through the COVID period, about a year and a half impact to the construction market, there's quite a bit of new that's happening. First of all, there's most recent escalation. You've probably seen and heard that in the material and commodity markets. There's a shortage of labor, which has both governmental and financial impacts to the cost of construction, availability of manpower, and of course, a pent-up demand that would have happened as a result of so much of the work that had been teed up being stalled for some period of time.
But in general, are people booking you now 3, 6, 9 months out in the future?
Oh yeah, our backlog is anywhere from 1 to 3 years in backlog right now. We have a significant amount of work that is accumulating.
One of the negative outcomes of COVID has been the rise in the cost of construction materials, which obviously is core to your business. Has that helped or hurt you in terms of current and future projects?
Sure, great question. It definitely has not helped our business, or at least the backlog and acquisition of new business. I would challenge that I don't believe all of the rising cost is necessarily related to COVID. I think you have really two different parallel factors that may be causing some of that impact. The first one is governmental regulatory, in particular tariffs, and what it's been like to try to get materials in from overseas, particularly Canada, which is, I think, a big factor on the lumber side. A lot of companies have moved to just-in-time delivery, so equipment that may have been on a shelf prior is being custom ordered. And so you get a compilation, sort of a perfect storm of people having changed their inventory control over the last decade, compiled with a recent work stoppage, shortage of manpower, and all of a sudden you can't make the product fast enough. And then, of course, the resurgence of the economy after a 1-year hiatus or slowdown.
I'm thrilled to hear it's not hurting your business, but I'm sort of amused as to how it possibly couldn't hurt your business.
So most of our work is commercial business, a lot of multifam, a lot of affordable housing, assisted living, senior healthcare, some commercial office interiors. And so in most of those markets, demand is demand. And it's not like a project is going to be put on a shelf in perpetuity, maybe for 6 months or a year to ride out, the pandemic or to ride out some economic hardship. But at the end of the day, if you need a new dorm, you need a new dorm.
You mentioned that you're doing affordable housing, a lot of stuff on the commercial side. Has your business development approach changed post-COVID?
Through COVID, we were forced to knock on doors and pursue work. We had about half of our portfolio, if not even more than half of our portfolio, either suspended or permanently canceled as a result of rethinking the new normal, rethinking our students coming back to school or not, and so on. And so as a result of that, we like anybody else, we had to go and look at some new markets and pursue some different work. Interestingly, now where it seems like the floodgates have opened, and not just as work resumed, I think if anything, we're seeing more volume today than we did a year or two ago. Our growth has been strategic since the very beginning of the company. We could have been a much larger company today if that was what we wanted to do. We focused our energies on deeper relationships, on more repetitive work, on really pursuing the markets that we wanted to pursue, and not just chasing work for the sake of chasing work.
A focus of this episode is going to be on workplace changes post-COVID. What are you seeing in terms of designs? I can't imagine offices are becoming bigger, but are there configurations changing? Help us to understand that, please.
Yeah, great point. And so I'm going to answer the question twofold, because one is both selfishly and the second is what I'm seeing with our clients. The growing demand for office space was gigantic. I mean, how many millions of square feet can the Fortune 100 companies rent, and at what cost? So we've already saw some of the larger companies in particular going into office hoteling and having shared work environments and so on. Of course, through COVID, it opened everybody's eyes on telecommuting and what that means. And frankly, a lot of the larger companies that were in the middle of signing and renewing, 500,000 square foot leases, went back and rethought that and said, do we really need 1 million square feet? I think as a result of that, you'll start to see the overall office demand start to drop. And I think that much more companies are starting to embrace telecommuting and remote working. And I think that the new challenge is going to be continuing to foster that culture, or that in-person culture in some of the telecommuting marketplaces. And I think if we could do that and do that well, I think you'll see telecommuting stick around for a while.
Matt, thank you very much.
You bet.
Matt Grosshandler, co-founder and VP of Operations at Bald Hill Builders.
Big choices after college, right? Grad school, maybe? Soar from your undergraduate major to a great career in business. Biomedical engineer to healthcare analyst. Health science to clinical systems analyst. Mechanical engineer to solutions engineer. Before you know it, you can have a master's degree in management studies. 9 months and you're in business.
So many people are enjoying working from home, but what happens if the boss says return to the office on September 1st or else? We're on location with Jim French, who's a senior lecturer at the Boston University Questrom School of Business and Career Management and Human Resources, and welcome.
Thanks, Greg. It's good to be here.
You run, as faculty lead, the student liaison role for the Evening MBA program. What's happening with your students? Are all of them continuing to dial in via Zoom, or are you starting to see a change to in-person learning?
Everything is happening. Some students are being asked to go back to the workplace on a more regular basis, if not on a permanent basis. But the vast majority have not changed drastically their relationship with work. They're still working virtually, and frankly, they want to continue to do that.
And if you are counseling one of them, either student or executive, and the boss says return or else, and they say, well, I'm not so sure, what would you tell them to do?
Well, I've always advised the worker to protect themselves first, because the companies always protect themselves. So you don't want to say something or do something that's going to put your job in jeopardy. However, you're in charge of your career. You're in charge of your life and your family and your time. Therefore, if you have to salute and go in, you do so, but the job market's pretty robust. And a lot of companies that take that attitude are going to lose really good employees, because there are a lot of companies that will give you now the flexibility that people want.
And I agree with you that workers should have a say in their careers and their environments, but how do you deal with the issue of parity and equality?
Well, I think each environment is going to determine that. If the leadership team is adamant about, hey, you're not showing loyalty to the company by your unwillingness to come back into the office 4 or 5 days a week, therefore we think lesser of you, that's going to have a negative impact on someone's status within the company and probably compensation and promotion opportunities. However, if the leadership team is really embracing the fact that the virtual employee or the employee with some sense of autonomy in their own life is just as valuable, then I think they will reward that person appropriately and those people appropriately. And we can see right now, Citibank being much more open to remote work and Goldman Sachs being much less open to remote work. We can see Apple, where Cook wants people in the office for collaboration purposes and so forth. But I think what gets missed in all of this, and that's the intrinsic motivation of the individual worker. Workers will produce when they have a few good things coming to them from the company. And one of them is autonomy. Surprise, surprise. I can determine how and when I work. That shows you respect me as a person. It respects my abilities and so forth. During the pandemic, we got that. People found out that they could log on at 7 a.m. instead of 9. They could log off a little bit earlier and spend some time with the family. That all seemed to work for people. I don't think that's going away.
Jim, if you don't feel as an employee that you're receiving that respect, should you demand an incentive to return to the office?
Money is not a motivator. And
how about additional vacation days? How about a promotion? How about something else?
I think those things would be good and could be helpful, but I think ultimately what people really value is the mental and physical space to determine how and when they should work. Some people are highly productive from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. at night, and when you leave them alone and let them do it from their kitchen table at home, they do tremendous work for you, because that works for them. So companies need to sort of open up and appreciate the differences that people have in their work schedule and when their brain is most active, what fits the family. The foundation of society is a strong family. We have a chance to sort of reshape the dynamics of the family too here, where mom and dad have a little bit more time with the kids. Maybe there's more meals together, there's more communication, so there's a lot of good stuff that can come from this.
Jim, are there any statistics that people have been more productive working from home during the pandemic?
Well, I mean, if you look at the gross labor productivity stats in the United States, they're actually up, and that's really good news. But that's sort of a large view of things. I think the most direct statistic we have is the success of the individual firms. I mean, we've had firms maintaining good growth patterns. We've had, in some cases, record earnings and profitability. So, I mean, again, there'll be studies and there'll be a lot of academics who look at all aspects of the remote work and financial outcome of that for individual companies. But right now, all the stats that we're looking at are pretty healthy. And it's pretty remarkable, by the way.
Jim, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Greg.
Jim French, Senior Lecturer at the Boston University Questrom School of Business in Career Management and Human Resources.
Are you a problem solver? Do you see the big picture and the small details? Want to turn big data into big decisions? Take AI to the boardroom. Translate rocket science into the science of business? Build your career at digital speed with a Master of Science in Business Analytics. Be ready for careers like analytics consultant, data science, analytics strategist, data translator, BI analyst, technical business analyst. 10 months and you're in business analytics.
Keeping seniors safe is perhaps our collective most important responsibility during the pandemic, but how do you do it continuously? We're on location virtually with the Chief People Officer, Deb Lemmerman of Hebrew Senior Life, and welcome to the Language of Business.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. Deb, what potentially is keeping you up most about the pandemic, not only in keeping your residents safe, but also the staff as well?
Well, I'll tell you, early last spring, we quickly tightened down on how many people were on each campus by temporarily stopping all visitors, all vendors, and anyone from the outside. We also asked any employee who was not part of the direct frontline care to our patients and residents to immediately switch to remote work. Then some of those jobs that couldn't be done remotely, those folks took on support roles that allowed us to really best support residents who were quarantined to their departments. And by that, I mean, we literally limited their movement of any patient and resident and provided them anything they might need in minute detail, from delivering their mail to walking their dogs. We set up grocery stores on site, and they could order groceries and we would deliver them to their apartments as well.
Hebrew Senior Life received some good press, really from the beginning of the core pandemic up until now. Compared with other senior living facilities, why do you think HSL was so successful?
Well, one of our cultural beliefs is ask what matters. And we really made it a point to find out from our staff and our residents and patients, what did they need? How could we best help them in this situation? We acted quickly to take care of them and have continued to pay attention to their health and their emotional well-being and their safety.
In many cases, the care given to seniors is only as good as the staff that's taking care of them. As we get into the fall, what are you going to do about staffing protocols, not only in patient areas, but also in the offices as well?
Well, we had put it in place last year, and we continue it this year and may tighten down on it. Certainly good use of masks and all PPE. we made sure that we initiated a system for COVID testing and contact tracing so that we could quickly identify and isolate any positive tests. Last year, we also, in the heat of it, really, we were providing hotels, we were providing meals, we provided extra appreciation pay, and of course, we covered pay when someone needed to be quarantined and couldn't work.
Do you think any of these positive changes, and congratulations, by the way, on doing what you have been doing, keeping seniors and the staff safe, but do you think any of those changes are now going to become permanent?
Well, I'll tell you, at the peak of the pandemic, we had about 250 or 10% of our staff working fully remotely. We left it up to each manager of those departments to determine the best model for continued productivity and job satisfaction. We have some that have returned completely, and we have some roles that may continue remotely on a permanent basis. We were one of the first last December to start vaccinating our staff, and we pushed really hard to make sure that we could support people towards that. We consequently have currently an 85% vaccination rate across our staff. That being said, we've also decided to, again, lead the way and make it a condition of employment for full vaccination as of October 1st.
Deb, thank you very much.
Sure.
Deb Lemmerman, Chief People Officer of Hebrew Senior Life, located in Roslindale, Massachusetts.
Big choices after college, right? Grad school, maybe? Soar from your undergraduate major to a great career in business. Biomedical engineer to healthcare analyst. Health science to clinical systems analyst. Mechanical engineer to solutions engineer. Before you know it, you can have a master's degree in management studies. 9 months and you're in business.
Rodrigo Contreras just received his undergraduate degree. Congratulations, by the way. Unfortunately for everybody involved, we spent a lot more time than we wanted to behind a computer rather than teaching and learning in person. But here's the interesting question. For someone like Rodrigo who just graduated, has that positively or negatively influenced what type of job he wants and what type of work environment he wants to physically operate in? Rodrigo, welcome to the Language of Business.
Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to be here.
You just graduated and you experienced and survived Zoom. I'm not going to say Zoom University because I know universities like BU really tried hard to deliver as much as we could in person. But has that influenced your type of job you want to look for, industry or something of that ilk?
It definitely has influenced it. While being remote is something that I never thought I would like and liked more than I did, it sort of still though reinforced me liking being in person and working in person. So it's definitely something that I'm going to try to aim for as much as possible.
So did Zoom not go well for you, in the classroom at least?
It's not that it didn't go well. It went well. I got taught and I took a lot out of my classes. It's just that I really enjoy being in person. From an academic standpoint, I really enjoy making connections with my professors, getting to know them. And over Zoom, that's very difficult to do when you just have to log on a minute before, and then you immediately log off afterwards. It's hard to talk to your professor and really get to know them.
But how about working for somebody? Would you prefer to basically lock yourself in your apartment and do your work and go to the office one day a week? Or completely 180 degrees in the opposite direction, would you want to work in an office full-time, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week?
I would much prefer to work full-time in an office, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I really enjoy immersing myself in the environment that I'm working in, and being on Zoom it's really hard to do that. I would start working and then something would happen somewhere in my apartment, my house, and then all of a sudden my attention was on that rather than work. And so I found that the work-life balance was really blurred. I'd find myself not doing work when I was supposed to, and then working when it was 11 at night and I was just looking to relax.
Any positives that emerged for you from your experience online with COVID?
Yes, definitely. I found myself learning how to manage my time a lot better, as well as sort of my problem solving skills got improved drastically. Time management, as I said, the work-life balance blur sort of forced me to use my time more efficiently, which is something that I thought I was pretty good at beforehand. but that has only improved since. And in terms of sort of helping my problem solving skills, in person, and if you run into a fork in the road when you're working on a project or something like that, you can turn to a coworker and ask them for their opinion, go to a boss and say, hey, what do you think we should do? On Zoom, that's not something you can do. You can do it, but you might get a response way later than you need it. And so it really helped me sort of develop those skills and figure out what's the best path to go down and to go down that path.
You are from an international heritage. Do you find that the environments outside of the United States are similar in terms of where the United States is now with respect to our reopening?
I think that it depends really on the work culture of a company or of a country. And that sort of dictates sort of how much they want to go back in person. Mexico has a really similar work culture to the US. And so they're really pushing for going back in person and getting everything back. They believe that if you're there, you can be more productive. I was talking with a coworker from Belgium a couple of days ago, and in Brussels, it's completely the opposite. They're really more relaxed, and they're letting employees choose if they want to go back into work. The mentality is work where you feel the safest and where you're the most productive. And for a lot of people, that's at home, and they're okay with that.
Given that different countries are reacting in a disparate manner about reopening, has COVID, especially if you want to pursue the consulting track, either excited you or scared the heck out of you in terms of working and traveling internationally?
It definitely hasn't. I'm lucky in the sense that I'm young. I'm in a percentile that isn't really severely affected with COVID. I'm vaccinated. So for me, I'm down to travel. I'm down to go anywhere. If it becomes a problem, it becomes a problem. But until then, I'm happy to travel. I'm happy to continue life as usual.
Rodrigo, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Rodrigo Contreras, recent graduate of Boston University, and talking about his needs and wants and productivity in terms of going into the job market post-COVID.
Support for the Language of Business is from Boston University Questrom School of Business. We're also available as a podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for watching.